Hi guys, this is Brian with River City Outdoors 85. In one of my previous videos, I kind of gave a basic overview of the new worksharp Professional Precision Adjust Elite Knife Sharpening System that I recently purchased. And in that video, I told you that I was going to be doing an instructional video on how to assemble and use this system. I'm not going to be doing a full sharpening video in this video. I'm going to show you how to put it together and how to set it up and how to adjust everything, and then we'll be doing some full sharpening videos using this system in the future. So to get started, we're going to crack this thing open again, and again there's the literature that comes with it, and then in your top part you have the full boat of diamond abrasives that start at 220 and go to 800, and then you have your ceramic hone that's rated at like 1,000 grit. Then you have 1,200, 2,000, and 3,000 grit resin bonded diamond stones, like I explained in the previous video, and then you have a leather strop. And then you also have your abrasive handle, which is what your abrasives attach to, and then your assembly screws, your clamp support, your digital angle indicator, and then some honing compound that you apply to your strop. And in the bottom part of this case, we have the rest of the assembly that I'm going to take out here so I can show you guys how this goes together. So the first thing we have is our base, which is a fairly hefty weighted base. And then we have the clamp. And then we have, in the last video, what I referred to as the tower. And then we also have the small knife table. So I'm going to set this off to the side here on the floor to get it kind of out of the way. And for now, the only thing I'm going to get out of here is this. And I need the assembly screws and the clamp support and the digital angle indicator. We're also going to pick, let's just grab, we'll just get the 220 diamond grit, or 220 grit diamond plate for demonstration purposes. Okay, so I'm going to set this off to the side. Alright, so the first thing you do to assemble this system is you have a hole in each side here. So you grab your tower, and it's got holes in each side of it as well. So you align that like so, and then you have the ends of your screws, and they go in those holes on each side, and so the tower itself is threaded with female threads. And before you tighten that side all the way down, I recommend starting this side as well. You could start both of them at the same time with two hands. Either way, you want to get those screws securely fastened, and it's got nice knurling on those knobs so you can get a hold of it and loosen it or tighten it pretty easily. Okay, so the first feature about this system that's of importance is obviously you have your base, and then you have your tower, which this dictates the angle that you're sharpening at. Attached to the tower is what I referred to as a yoke before, which essentially that is what it is. And then you also have your clamp. Now the way your clamp works is, excuse me, you can squeeze the clamp and open it up, and it will accept knives with a blade thickness of just over 1/4 of an inch. And then to tighten that clamp or loosen it, you have this wheel that tightens or loosens the clamp to secure it. So it's like a two-way clamping system. Okay, and then so you have this notch here and this notch on top. So when you install your clamp, you just simply take this end, and you have a hole inside of there. So you slide it in there like so, so you get that click sound. And then you have this red button on the side. You push down, and that will allow your clamp to rotate and then lock back in place. The clamp will only rotate essentially 180 degrees. So, this direction, and then back this direction. So now you have the clamping mechanism in place. You also have this black lever on top that you can pull and lean this back. Now this is important if you have longer knives. Say you're sharpening something with like a 6 or 8 or 10 inch blade or something in this system. If you were to have it down and you try to rotate it, the extra length of that knife is going to cause you to hit the table. So, or your worktop, your bench, whatever you're sharpening it. So you can raise that and then rotate your knife and everything clears. So that's very convenient. One of the ultimate conveniences to this system that I can see based on some of the other fixed angle systems that are out there is the fact that you can rotate your clamp. You don't have to sharpen one side and unclamp it, reinstall the knife, and then sharpen the other side. You literally sharpen your work on one side till you establish your burr, and then you flip the clamp over, and you do the same to the other side. So that's very convenient in comparison to some of the other fixed angle systems that are out there on the market. Okay, so next thing we're going to go over is you have this clamp support. And this clamp support only goes on one way. It attaches to this. And it just slides on there like so. And what it does is it sits directly underneath the clamp and it stabilizes. It helps keep it from wiggling around as you put any amount of pressure on the knife that you have clamped in. It does get in the way of being able to rotate the clamp. So if you have this in place, so see, again, if you don't have that in place, you can rotate the clamp, with no problem. And if you're doing smaller knives or, smaller blades that don't require a lot of pressure, then you don't necessarily have to use this because this is pretty solid to begin with. But if you want to use it for extra stability on a larger knife, then, you slide it underneath there. But the thing that you can see is that now you can't rotate the clamp with that in place. So you will have to raise it, then rotate the clamp, and then set the blade back, or set the knife back in place. Okay, so now that we've gone over that, this is your abrasive handle. So this is what your abrasives attach to. And as you can see, one side is just flat to keep that handle from coming off on the one end, and then the other side is threaded. And those threads go to this yoke because the inside of that yoke is threaded. So you will simply just thread that in like this to install it and attach it firmly. And you do have these rubber kind of, not necessarily O-rings, they're kind of flat rings, but they serve as bumpers. You can place them as far up and down the rod as you want to, so that you can set your exact range of motion on your abrasive handle. So like, if you don't want to go, say if you want to be able to use the whole length of the stone, then you would bump this up to where it would be up to about here. And then if you don't want to go below a certain point here, then you would bump that up to limit the range of the motion of the abrasive handle. So the other thing about the abrasive handle, in addition to that, is you do have a ceramic rod, round ceramic, for sharpening serrations on blades, and it would do a very nice job of doing that, because you can get in between the teeth and serrations on a blade and sharpen it efficiently. And you could do so at a specified angle, because you can still set the angle of that. So the other nice part about this is you have this kind of notch up here, so you can effectively set this abrasive handle up out of the way for if you are installing the knife or taking the knife out, or you just need it out of the way while you're changing stones or wiping the blade off, or anything like that. you can have it out of the way instead of having it just sit over to the side or something like that. It's very convenient to just be able to lift it up and out of the way efficiently like that. And it's shaped in such a way here on the end, it's got a couple little grooves, and they sit perfectly in a couple of little, essentially, grooves inside of here. So, all right, so the way that we use this system is there's a large, strong magnet inside the abrasive handle, and there are a couple of little tabs on each end. And those correlate to the holes on the abrasive plates. So you line those tabs up, and as you can see, the top is plated diamond and the bottom is just solid flat steel. So you line those tabs up to those holes, and then your abrasive plate just snaps and locks in place. And it's a good strong magnet. As you can see, it won't shake off of theirs. In fact, it's rather difficult to get off it, and that's why they put these little divots in here, if you will, these little recesses, to help you grab a hold of the stone so that you can pull it off, or your plate rather, instead of stone. But so that installs to there in such fashion. And then again, you can still set that up out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to, now that since we've gone over how to assemble it and the range of motion of it and things like that, I'm going to show you how to set a knife up in it and set your angle adjustments and so forth. So I've got a couple of just cheap kitchen knives from the drawer, stuff that we don't use a lot anymore because we've got better knives and stuff. But just to serve as an example, as you can see, they're two very different style kitchen knives. One's like a utility knife, and the other one's more like a chef's knife. The difference is, one's a longer blade and a wider blade, and the other one is a shorter blade and a narrower blade. Now the blades are slightly different in terms of thickness. This blade's just a little, just a hair thicker than this blade. So the reason that I'm wanting to use these two as an example is because they're quite different in terms of blade width and blade shape, and slightly different in terms of blade thickness, and that's important as we get into this on setup. So again, we'll just take one of these knives and we will attach it to the clamp. Now when you attach it, ideally what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the blade, the cutting edge of the blade, pretty much centered in the clamp as much as possible, because that eliminates flex on the blade on one end more so than the other. So you want to center it as well as possible. And then you really want your cutting edge to be as parallel to your clamp and to the sharpening system as possible. So this is kind of more of a rough setup, but so now that you've got it clamped in there, then we're going to take the wheel and we're going to tighten it up. And I'm not going to tighten it down super tight. I'm just using this as an example for how this setup works and how to set it up. So we're not going to be sharpening, we're just showing you, as I said before, going through setup. So I got it tightened up enough. It's not going anywhere or anything. So then the next phase to that is in order to set your angle properly, you have to have the knife in the clamping position that you want. And you have to have an abrasive plate attached to it, because if you set it without an abrasive plate and then add the abrasive plate, it's going to change the actual overall angle, as I'll show you in a minute. So what we want to do is we just want to lay the stone on the edge of the knife, and then we want to essentially we want to pick an angle that's fairly close. So say, since this is a kitchen knife, I would like to be at, it's a really thin blade, and since it's a really thin blade, you probably won't clear the clamp at a really, really low angle, like 15 degrees. But, so in that case, you kind of want to go off of where you can clear the clamp at. So I can see light plenty good through there, and we're, as far as the clamping, angle is concerned, we're just above 15 degrees. We might be able to go down to exactly that yellow line right there. Yeah, we can still clear there. Okay, so we know based on this, because we have guides, okay? So on the clamp guide, we know that we are somewhere above 15 degrees, but below, well, yeah, we're just above 15 degrees, but below 20 degrees, obviously. So we could sharpen the knife just like this and say, well, you know, we know that's a fairly low angle, and we would be okay with that for a kitchen knife, because generally we would like to be like 15 to 18 degrees on most kitchen knives, because you want a good sharp edge, so you can do nice slicey push cuts on vegetables and things like that. But if we want to know exactly where our angle is, that's where this digital angle indicator comes in at. So it has two buttons. It has a power button and it has a 0 button. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to turn it on, and then you're going to set it flat on the surface that you're working on. So right next to the sharpener, and then you're going to 0 it out so that it is sitting on level, even plane with the sharpener itself. Okay, now you have a semicircular groove inside of this angle indicator, and it's got a magnet inside of it, as you can see. So what you're going to do is you're going to set that on top of this sharpening rod, and that's going to tell you exactly what angle you're actually sharpening at. And you can check for overall accuracy by also checking the bottom if you like. And generally there is a very slight amount of variance between top and bottom. As you can see, we're talking about like 1/4 of a degree from top to bottom overall. That's not enough to have any negative effects, especially considering the fact that where you see the variance is from the far top end to the far bottom end. So you're going to be just fine as far as where the majority of your sharpening is taking place at. So now the other thing that we can see is that it's plainly obvious that the 15-degree marker would be dead in the middle of those two yellow marks as far as the relation to the clamp is concerned, which is what this side is showing you. So we can see that our exact angle that we're showing on our angle indicator and the angle that is being indicated here are not matching. And the reason that that's not matching is because of the very thin profile on this knife blade and the width of the knife blade as well, because those two things affect the exact angle that you're working at. And we're going to show that here in just a second. So we know right now where we are. Here on the tower we're not showing 15 degrees, but when we are on the actual rod we're right at 15 degrees. And as you can see, if we take it down, it will lower that angle. And if we take it up, obviously it's going to raise that angle. So, as I said before, this is essentially an inclinometer, and you can buy these for other systems and such on Amazon, or if you would like maybe a higher quality one than what comes with this. However, I can't see that there's anything wrong with the quality of this one. Not that I'm an expert on the matter, but you know, you can pay pretty much whatever you want to for an inclinometer. So, you know, there's other options out there that you can buy, but the fact that they provide you with one with this system is awesome, because you can literally dial in the exact angle that you're looking for. So we can move it down just a little closer to that. Okay, so prime example, where we would be showing 20 degrees on this blade would be right about there. And In this case, that's pretty close, but it wasn't as close when we were down at the lower angle that we were at earlier. So in this case, that is fairly close, but I wonder if that's, let's check it again. Yeah, in this case it is fairly close, but when we go down an angle like we were before, if we show we're exactly 15 degrees, like in the middle there, and we can check that angle, whoops, and we can see that it's off some. So now we're going to move this up out of the way, and we're going to go to a different blade style. We're going to leave this where it is, which is close to 15 degrees, and we're going to see what effect having a wider blade that's slightly thicker has on your angle adjustments. So we're going to slide this out of there, and we're just going to do the same thing with this knife. We're going to pop that clamp open and go about halfway down the blade and do a fairly good job of making that cutting edge parallel. We're not super concerned with it since we're just displaying the adjustment capabilities and setup for this system rather than actually doing some sharpening at the moment. Okay, so that's pretty solid in there. Now we're going to lower our clamp back down, set at the same place we were, which was close to 15 degrees earlier. We're going to set that back down, and we're going to make sure that we're still zeroed. And we're going to set that back on there. And see, now we can see that we are more than 1 degree off compared to where we were. So before, with it set right here, which is 15 degrees here, it was about 14.25 actual, according to the indicator. But now, by changing the blade width and slightly changing the thickness, there's just a very small amount of thickness difference between this blade and that blade, so that's probably not making near as much difference as the actual blade width itself would be, because there's a considerable difference there. But as you can see, we're a full degree off. So we're a full degree below where we were with this blade in there at this exact setting compared to having this blade in there. So that's why having this digital angle indicator is, I'm not going to say it's a must, but it's very definitely adequate and necessary if you're looking to get the most precision out of your angles, and if you're looking to know exactly what angles you're sharpening at. Because again, what this indicates here is a fair assessment, and it's going to get you close, and at least close enough to have a good sharp working edge. But having this is definitely an added benefit, and that's why worksharp added it to this system. So now that we've gone over how to assemble everything, how to install and take off your abrasive plates and all of those things, and how to set it up and set your angles up, or put the knives in the clamp, set your angles up, and so forth, we're going to go over one last thing here. So I'm going to unclamp this knife from this clamp, and we're going to set these knives, or this knife at least, off to the side. I'm going to set this off to the side for now because we don't necessarily need it at the moment. Okay, so one thing I did mean to show you earlier was this. Just a demonstration quickly. So you can, again, as I said before, you can lift this back, push this button, and then that rotates your knife. So you are using your abrasive and you're sharpening your knife, of course, you can do upward strokes, you can do downward strokes, you can do a sawing action, or you can do sweeps. However there are videos out there from Worksharp and some other people on YouTube that go over the different methods, and so it's kind of personal preference on which do you like the results of. What I found so far with using this is that I generally like the sweeps, the forward sweeps, because what that does is replicate what you get when you freehand sharpen. When you freehand sharpen, you're bringing the knife edge across a stone like this, or you can start at the tip and bring it across like this. But either way, you're doing a sweeping motion rather than a straight up and down motion. So I prefer the sweeping method as opposed to the sawing back and forth, or only pull strokes or only push strokes. I like the sweeping motion. And if you get really adequate with it, you can use the sweeping motion to utilize more of the full length of your stone, and thus you're not putting too much pressure in any specific area on that plate. So you're not wearing a certain area off of that plate sooner than the rest of it. So I feel like the sweeping motion, especially if you're starting high and working your way up, like so, is going to give you more even plate wear and be more akin to sharpening freehand. So the other thing that I was going to show you before I take this knife back out of here, now that I have this set up like this is something I meant to do just a second ago, and I apologize that I forgot about it. But we're going to flip this knife back around like we had it. That was the other difference I was going to show you. So we know earlier at this angle with this knife, we were relatively close to like 14.25 degrees. We're going to put this back on here real quick so I can show you something else. So we're going to check our angle again, because that's another thing that I was wanting to speak about with this system, and in general with any fixed angle system for that matter. Okay, so we're zero to our work surface again. Okay, so we're still 14.25, 14.5 degrees. Okay, so what I wanted to show you was the difference that not having the plate on makes, and why you shouldn't set your angles without an abrasive plate installed. Because as you can see, our angle has now changed to like 15.75 degrees. So you definitely do not want to set your angles on a system like this without your abrasive plate in place, because as you can see, the thickness of that angle will change, or the thickness of your plate rather, I'm sorry, will change the angle that you're sharpening at. And that's why blade thickness is also an important factor to changing the angles, and blade width is an important factor to changing those angles, and that's why this will never be 100% accurate, and that's why Worksharp provided this tool. So now we're going to get, like I tried to say before I forgot about this part, we're going to get to where we're talking about the next part, and kind of the last part of the system rather. We're going to loosen this knife up, and we're going to take it out of the clamp, and we're going to set it off to the side. Now we're going to take our clamp, and how you get the clamp off is you just simply push the red button down, the same button that you rotate with. So you push the button down, you pull your clamp off, okay? And you're going to take your clamp support off as well. And this comes back down, and your small knife table has a groove that matches up with this, and it goes in place of the clamp. So then what you have is this is set up for small knives. So like small, like slip joint pocket knives with small blades, like a a short clip point blade or a short spade blade or a pin blade or something like that. Shorter, smaller pocket knives. This is set up for those because it's hard to sharpen those in clamps like this because those blades are so small without having your abrasive handle bumping into the clamp or something like that with such a small narrow blade. So they've set this up to help with that. So what you have is you have two adjustments on this once it's in place, and it's magnetized so the blades will stick to it. So the first thing is this big adjustment knob. As you can see, slides this mechanism back and forth. So what that does is, we're going to use this knife for an example, is this part here sets up against the spine of the knife, or the spine of the blade rather, and as you can see that is magnetic, so it gets on there pretty hard. And you obviously want some of your blade to overhang this table, so you can use this adjustment back and forth to set how far your blade overhangs the table. And then this adjustment on top is an alignment adjustment. So it will push, like if you have a blade that's curved in the front, you can use this to push that curvature forward toward you, or you can allow it to set back. So it allows you a range of adjustment for small and different blade shapes. So how this overall works is, let's just say if we were setting this up just specifically for this knife. Now, this knife is not indicative of what this setup is particularly designed for, but we're using it as an example. So what I would want if I was going to sharpen this knife on this is to have the spine of the knife sitting up against here solidly, and since there's not a lot of curvature to that blade, I can get this blade to sit pretty parallel with the sharpener itself, and then I can use the macro adjustment knob to set how far off of that table, because you want as much of that blade sitting on that table as possible for support, but you also don't want the cutting edge directly on the edge of the table either. So you could set up exactly how much overhang you want, and that right there I would feel pretty comfortable with. And then all you do from that point is, say you have your abrasive on, and then you would just, and since these are small blades that this is designed for, it's not going to take an overbearing amount of pressure to sharpen that blade. Now you can hold on to it to steady it up while you're sharpening in it, and so forth, to keep it from doing a lot of wiggling and stuff. But that is a pretty stout magnet, and as you can see, it does require a bit of force to get that knife off of that thing. So the idea behind the small knife table was, Worksharp was aware that there was a downfall to this clamping system, and that downfall was that it didn't work necessarily with small knives. And since they wanted to create a system that they could market that could be used on larger knives and medium-sized knives and small knives, that's why they designed and set this up to go along with this system, so that it gives you the ability to sharpen a very wide variety of knives and different blade lengths and thicknesses and widths and shapes and overall sizes and so forth. So in my opinion, this is a very well thought out system. It's a very well designed system. It's a very solid, sturdy system, because when you just put the clamp in, I mean, this is all metal. This setup here is all metal. You have a solid weighted base. I mean, this thing, it's solid. It's not jiggly or wiggly or any of that. And you can hear, you have a solid clamp, lock up, and everything. and it locks solidly in place. It's not wiggling around. It's not going to unlock on you when you're using it or anything like that. So the overall design of this system and how solid it is and the quality of the material that it's made out of, along with everything that it comes with, I mean, this is solid in and of itself, but then of course you have the option to go and add even more sturdiness to it with that. And that's why this is so well thought out and so well designed, because they took their previous systems and the pluses and minuses to those systems, and they took note of all those things and all the complaints and feedback that they got from their customers to design this system, which improves greatly upon the others that came before it. So you've got a good solid system that, I mean, the adjustment knobs are very solid. So I mean, they stay. When I've used this system, I've checked it for feedback to see, is it maintaining angles well and so forth, and it did fantastic. So overall, I'm very happy with this system and the performance of it, especially for the price, because when you consider that it gives you the option to sharpen, I mean, this thing has a very wide range of function, as you can see. It's rated for up to 15-inch knife blades. So when you have a system that you can use to sharpen a blade from 15 inches down to, an inch and a half or so, all in one system, and get very good, precise angles out of it that you can check with precision equipment, and you get, again, as I said in the last video, a full boat of quality diamond abrasives, along with the addition of the higher grit finishing abrasives that are resin bonded diamond plates instead of just traditional standard diamond plates. This, and of course you're getting, you're getting the ceramic hone that you can use to finish blades with or touch blades up with, and a leather strop to finish the work that you've done. And you can use the compound, which is probably chromium oxide. I think it's supposed to be like 0.1 micron compound. You can use it on your strop, or you can use a diamond emulsion, or whatever you choose, or you can just use bare leather like a lot of people do. But when you have this much and this much capability included in a system like this, it makes it fantastic, especially for the build quality of the thing and the price. I mean, $400, when you compare how expensive some fixed angle systems is very reasonable, especially for how complete and well put together, well thought out, and well made this setup is. And then, of course, the other part comes with we'll go back to this, the added advantage of having a very nicely organized heavy-duty plastic case that has really good quality seals in the lid and all that. So this goes right back in here, just sets down in there like so. We take our assembly screws back out and we put them right back where they came from. And we just take our tower off, we push that yoke down, we pop our clamp out, so put your clamp back right where it goes, you set your tower back where it goes, and your base just sits right back in there, and then your small knife table goes right back in place. And then the top of your system sits right back where it came from, nice and neat. And then your digital angle indicator. Yeah, okay, sorry, I forgot to take the clamp support off. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so your clamp support just goes right back in here, like so. So you have this very well laid out, very nicely organized, heavy duty plastic carry case. It's very much like a gun case, or, you know, something like a waterproof storage case. And you can literally pack this system up nice and tight and take it anywhere you want to go with it. So you can take this thing, you know, you can take it on a hunting trip, you can take it on fishing trips, camping, whatever. You can take it to your buddy's house or whatever, and you can, as long as you've got a good, solid, steady work surface to work on, like a kitchen table or a workbench in your garage, whatever, you can sharpen most any knife, and this system will sharpen any blade steel at any angle that you want, from like 15 degrees up to 30 degrees. So I think this is a fantastic system for the money. Do I think there are systems out there that are maybe better built and more precise? Yes. But do I also know for a fact that you have to spend a lot more money on some of those systems, like the TS Prof and such? Yes, you absolutely do. That is a fact. So that's what makes this system fantastic for the money. So I'll be doing, as I said, some up and coming sharpening videos where I show you how I sharpen knives with this system and kind of some tips and tricks that I've figured out so far. And you know, recently I posted an advertisement where I'm going to start going back to, you know, doing professional knife sharpening services for people. And I may, if customers want, sharpen some of their knives on videos and post those sharpenings on videos. But when I do personal sharpenings for my knives, I'll do those on video and post that as well. So be looking forward to content like that in the upcoming future. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope it's, you know, very informative as far as, you know, all the details of this system and how it works are concerned. I'm sure I could have done a better job on some things, and I'm sorry about that if I wasn't quite efficient enough at this. But I hope you've enjoyed this video and it was informative for you. Please give me a like, a subscribe, you know, share my videos on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank you guys. Have a good night, and I'll see you in the next video.